Incarcerated women. Orange is the New Black had captivated the country's attention and created tremendous awareness of the plight of women in prison. Most discussions about mass incarceration focus only on men. This is perhaps understandable, given that the American prison population is 93% male. But women constitute the fastest growing group within prisons and jails, with over 160,000 women behind bars at any given time. In comparison to other countries, the U.S. houses 30% of the world's female prisoners, despite only having 5% of the world's population. And the U.S. incarcerates women at a higher rate than most countries lock up their men. Moreover, women bear the brunt of the cost, consequences, and suffering for the millions of incarcerated men, who are their sons, brothers, and fathers. The vast majority of people serving life sentences in U.S. prisons are men, but the number of lifers who are women has increased dramatically in recent years, and evidence suggests that many of them have complicated histories with trauma and violence that courts often overlook. A recent study by the Sentencing Project, a nonprofit research group that promotes criminal justice reform, presents new data on this small but growing portion of the prison population. The study, conducted in partnership with the National Black Women's Justice Institute and the Cornell Center on the Death Penalty worldwide at Cornell Law School, shows that the number of women serving any life sentence increased by 19% between 2008 and 2020. The number of women serving life without the possibility of parole increased by 43%. Did you know that 1 in 15 women in U.S. prisons, over 6,600 women, are serving a life sentence or a virtual life sentence of 50 years or more? About a third of them, nearly 2,000 women, are serving life without parole, and 52 women are on death row. The study examined the reasons behind the statistics, concluding that women face gender-based stigmas and biases in the courts that can affect their sentencing outcomes. The study also concluded that the history of sexual and or physical trauma of a woman complicates the circumstances that lead them to commit violent acts. In some instances, women who commit crimes are responding to intimate partner violence. Ashley Nellis, senior research analyst at the Sentencing Project and the study's author, said the criminal justice system often does not acknowledge the relationship between trauma and violent crimes. At its worst, it's sometimes blaming the victim. Let's say a sex worker kills a customer, which happens because she feels threatened and things get out of hand. Then she's sort of blamed for being in that kind of work. Nellis said more research is necessary to fully explain the rise in women serving life without parole. But she attributes some of the rise in numbers to laws expanding the use of life without parole and mandatory minimum sentences. The study recommends that reforms to end these extreme sentences should acknowledge the complicated history of trauma for women serving life in prison and how it might affect their behavior. A woman's experience with violence as victims and perpetrators are different from that of men, the study says. The study contends that women are at a legal disadvantage because of gender-neutral sentencing policies that don't differentiate between the principal perpetrator of a crime and the sideline participants. Women frequently play a smaller role in violent crimes, such as being a getaway driver, and we'll talk about this in this video, but still receive the same punishment according to the study. Several women have been sentenced to death for murders, regardless of their role in the crime, a phenomenon that is even more common among women sentenced to life without parole, according to the study. What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button, share the video. Somebody needs to hear this. As you can tell from the opening, today we're going to be talking about the women, the faces of women. But Chad, what do you mean the faces of women? Are you just going to show us their pictures? No, we're going to put up the pictures, but we're also going to talk about who these people are and what the struggle is like. And I've had a unique experience in federal prison where I was at a prison where they had a women's camp next door. And their visiting room, or their outside visits, were right there. When we would walk the track, we'd be able to hear them. And you know, on those visits, you'd hear little kids over there playing with their mom. Mommy, I love you. Come on, Mommy, swing me. And you're like, damn, man. I remember walking that track and hearing that, like, wow, man. These people are out here on a visit with their mom. And then you would sometimes hear, and I mean this isn't something I'm making up. Sometimes you would hear the little kids crying when it was time to leave. They'd be telling their mother, Mommy, I want to go home. Come on, Mommy. Mommy, why can't you come home with us? And for real, man, that used to hit me. I heard it a few times. And I was like, man, couldn't even imagine what that is like, right? And right now there might be a young woman heading down the wrong road. Let's talk about that, because I've seen a lot of this. You know, I got a bunch of cases where, you know, some women have made decisions with white collar crimes, some with drugs, some with armed robberies. And you heard when I read about, you know, sometimes the women's the getaway driver. We're going to talk about this Hispanic woman that was a getaway driver, and she ends up with 32 years in prison. They don't care if you're young. They don't care if you're old. They don't care if they give you 100 months, 120 months, 300 months. They don't care if you live or die in prison. They don't care that you're a mom. They don't care that you're a grandmother. They don't care that you're 65 years old with numerous health conditions and, you know, you're vulnerable because of COVID. They don't care about that. Why would they? Why would they care about that? So the first person that I really want to talk about tonight is Roberta Drayham. Roberta Drayham, in prison for a nonviolent drug crime. I'm going to put her picture up as I talk, too. Roberta Drayham, born in 1967. She was born in 1967, and she's sitting in a federal prison right now. What is she sitting in prison for? And how long? She's in prison for 130 months. What is she, 50-something years old? She's sitting in there with 130 months. That's 10 years, 10 months. She's got a nonviolent drug crime. Got numerous medical issues. COVID is running rampant all over again in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, probably in the state prisons as well. And she's vulnerable, man. She filed a motion for compassionate release and argued, said, Judge, I'm a nonviolent drug offender. I got these health conditions. I want to get an order from you that releases me, lets me go home and go to a place where I'm safe. This is out of the Western District of Wisconsin. And the judge writes back and says, no, Roberta, we're not letting you out. We're not letting you out. You're 50-something years old. We're not going to let you out until 2027. 2027 for what? Conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine. Roberta was just a drug user. She wasn't this lady that was out there buying houses and jet skis and boats and living a lavish life. Wasn't her. Wasn't her life. She was a drug addict. I think her husband had passed away. She ends up in prison for 130 months when she's 50 years old. I believe she lost her daughter. Daughter was one of her co-defendants. It's just, man, it's just wild, right? When you think about this. The faces of women. Women, they don't care if you suffer. They will send you to prison. They will send you to prison for the rest of your life. Some of you might have heard about the story of Michelle West. What's Michelle West got, a life sentence? Michelle West is sitting in prison with a life sentence. Another girl. And don't forget this, Roberta Drayham has a clemency petition in right now with Judge Biden, with President Biden. Will she get compassion? Will Biden finally do something to grant clemency? Will he right some of these wrongs? I understand there has to be punishment. But the moral of the video is the punishment is overwhelming. So like I was saying earlier, there might be some young women that are watching this, right? And you might be caught up right now with, what do they call it? Swiping. Doing some white collar swiping. Somebody sends you in, and we had a girl, they had her cashing checks. She's cashing all these big checks. They're giving her $400 or $500. She's a single mother on welfare. She's cashing checks. They're giving her $400 or $500. She's cashing $9,000 checks, $8,000 checks. They give her $500 per check. She's making a little money. But really, that money's being spent on what? Maybe she got her hair done, her nails. Maybe she got a cheap-ass car. And then she ends up in prison, man, with 10 years. She got a 10-year sentence for swiping. White-collar crime. Dude sent her in. She's making moves, making this little petty-ass money, and she gave up 10 years of her life for it. 10 years of her life for some petty-ass money. How much money did she make? Brittany Gix. G-I-X. Brittany's in federal prison. She was 30 years old. Got involved with a dude, and he got her on the wrong road. She got involved in distributing methamphetamine. I believe it was in Louisiana. Distributing methamphetamine in Louisiana. We're going to give you 10 years. You're a woman. You're a mother. You got kids. But we're just going to give you 10 years. Can you think about that? Stop for a minute. Let's stop for 10 seconds and just think about how long 10 years is. Are you a mother? Are you watching this video? Think about 10 years of not being with your son, not being with your daughter. Let's say she's just starting kindergarten. She'll be 15 years old. She'll be in high school when you get out. The best years of her life. So sometimes you got to think about it. If your husband or your baby's father is telling you, hey, I need you to go drop off this meth. You write your own story. You're the author of this story. What are you going to do? Think about it. These are mandatory minimums we're talking about. You know, they're talking about changing the laws and doing this and doing that. But those people that make the laws, they think 10 years is good too. So we're looking out. They got 10. 10 ain't that bad. It's not that bad because they never spent a night in jail. They never spent a night away from their kids. They were never in a position where they couldn't do nothing, where they couldn't help anyone. You don't want to be that person, do you? Do you want to be that person? I sure hope not. So Brittany's sitting in prison right now, nonviolent drug crime, praying to get out, praying that she gets a second chance to be a mother, a law-abiding citizen. She's praying to get some compassion from the president. President Joe Biden, what will you do? Brittany has a clemency petition pending at the White House. Will you find her worthy of a second chance to reclaim her life? I sure hope so. I sure hope so because I think she deserves it. You know, these women that I'm talking about have completed numerous rehabilitative programs in prison. They've changed their character. They deserve a second chance. But it's not just about them. It's an example to you. An example that you don't want to be these people. You don't want to be that lady that's sitting in prison. And I can tell you, Roberta Drayham has done everything in her power to get out of prison. And it's just not working out for her. It hasn't worked out for her in any sense. I'm going to talk about this girl, man. Hispanic girl, Dalia Marquez Bernal. She was 32 years old when her husband wanted to commit a robbery. Her boyfriend, I think it was her kid's father, says, look, going to do this robbery. I need you to drive for me. Don't trip. I got it. He runs in the place with a gun, robs the place. They leave. They get away. A couple days later, they decide, hey, we're going to rob some more people with a gun. With the same gun. They got the same gun. So we're going to go in here. I'm going to rob these folks, and we're going to take off. Now, just sit out here in the car, Dalia. I'll be right out. There was some pressure on her. Financial pressures. They're trying to take care of things at the house. They just chose the wrong way to do it, right? And I want you to think about this. She's 32 years old. They sentenced her for what's called 2 924C counts. Yeah. The stuff that they changed on the First Step Act, she's sentenced under that. 7 years for the first gun because he displayed the gun when he did the robbery. She didn't. She stayed in the car. She's just a getaway driver. The next robbery, he displays the gun again. He points the gun at him. He robs the people. Another 25 years. So Dalia Bernal, at 32 years old, is sentenced to 32 years. As long as she's been on this earth, that's how long the judge wants to put her in prison for. You tell me if it's right. You tell me if it's wrong. Could you imagine doing 32 years at the age of 32? You leave a daughter out there, or maybe you might be leaving a son. You don't want to be her, do you? And there's nothing she can do. We wrote motions for her. We tried to help her. The judge still hasn't answered it. She's mad. She wants the judge to answer. So this is some of what I wrote in her motion. People grow, mature, and evolve. And because conditions and circumstances change, it's virtually impossible to make sound decisions when first imposing sentence about precisely how long someone should spend behind bars. But that is exactly how the federal criminal justice system works. Judges are required to act as if they are omniscient, and the prison terms they impose, for all intents and purposes, are final. Despite having no realistic hope of ever being released from prison at a time when she could do something meaningful with her life, Bernal has done everything in her power to rehabilitate herself, as demonstrated by her genuinely exceptional accomplishments and meritorious prison record. She does not seek to justify, diminish, or detract from the seriousness of her offenses, and she unequivocally accepts full responsibility for her criminal conduct. Miss Bernal, at the age of 32, now moves this court pro se for an order granting a reduction of sentence to time served, as she respectfully submits that extraordinary and compelling reasons exist for a reduction in Miss Bernal's current stacked sentence. Let me stand corrected. She was younger than 32. I believe she was 24. I believe she was 24 and got sentenced to 32 years. You think about that for a minute. 32 years. The best years of your life are gone. And I can tell you from personal experience, that was just the opening of her motion that I wrote. But from experience and from talking to her family, she's not going to get out of prison until she's 64, and her family's suffering. Her daughter's suffering. See, sometimes when we get involved in these things that we get involved, we don't think about the kids, right? Never been to jail before? You don't think about those visits because you don't know nothing about a prison visit. You don't know that your daughter's going to be able to come over there and play with you outside at an outside visit. You don't know that she's going to cry when it's time to leave and say, "Mommy, I just want you to come home with me." And Mommy says, "Well, Mommy's been a bad girl, so Mommy has to stay here at the prison." And your daughter's 7 years old. And then the years pass by, and then she's 9. She's saying the same thing on the visit. She's crying. And then she's 12. She's telling you the same thing on the visit. And then before long, she's 16 and she doesn't cry anymore. Maybe she's 19 or 20 and then she doesn't come visit anymore. You don't want to be that mother, do you? Don't be that mother. This is a prison content show, right? Maybe it's a staying out of prison content show. Maybe that's what we should be calling it. A staying out of prison content show. And you know something? I feel bad for Dalia. Fully rehabilitated. I can 100% that. I can say 100% that this is a woman that will probably never be back in prison. She has an excellent work history. She works in the receiving department at the prison. Kind of like a trusted job. Numerous programs. Done everything she could do to get out of prison. But the one thing that's beyond her reach, the one thing that she can't do is get herself out of prison. That power lies with the court. And not only does that power lie with the court, but this motion's been in for 1.5 years and the judge hasn't answered. And she's got a mean judge. She's got a nasty judge. What's her next step? Clemency? To the president? Some people might say, did she deserve to go to prison, Chad? She was involved in armed robberies. Some people might say she got too much time. I'm going to fall in that category. We understand that there must be punishment for irrational, irresponsible choices. But do we take a 24-year-old woman with a little daughter and send her to prison for 32 years? And then you know what the catcher is for her? When she gets out of prison, after serving all that time in prison, she'll likely be deported back to her country. A country that she no longer knows. A country where she might not have any family members. You think prison was bad? Wait till she gets over there where she's an old woman now. She's 64 years old, doesn't know nothing about life, nothing about the world. It's all passed by her. She doesn't know nothing about a cell phone. Can you imagine what the cell phones are going to look like 32 years later? I can tell you what they look like from 18 years later. They were Sprint flip phones. And then when I come home, they're iPhone 11s or 12s or whatever this is. It's a computer with a phone, right? Think about that. And here's a case that's pretty close to me, pretty close to my heart. Holly Roberts. Holly Roberts went to prison. Honestly, her mother and her stepfather, phenomenal people. She's got a beautiful little daughter. Parents reached out to me and said, Chad, we need help. And I said, well, let me look at the case. I'm going to try to do everything I can for you. And I did that. I did everything I could. She was 27 years old, sentenced to 100 months. Chad, how much is 100 months? I like to ask old Siri over here, but you know what? 100 months is 8 years, 4 months, right? So she left her little daughter for 8 years and 4 months. Why? Did she choose her addiction? Or did the addiction choose her? She was a drug addict. She chose her addiction. She made choices that she deeply regrets today. Is she rehabilitated, Chad? I think she is. I think today that she appreciates life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All the things that our forefathers told us mean something. You might be thinking, 8 years ain't nothing compared to some of them other sentences, like that 32 years. Let me tell you, one day for a mother away from her daughter is far too long. Far, far too long. And who gets stuck raising the kids? The grandparents. They've already raised their child, or their children, and now they're stuck raising their grandchildren. Not that they don't enjoy it, but I guess when you're a parent and you start thinking about your later years, your golden years, those are the years when, you're starting to get ready to retire and you want to spend your time with your wife or your husband. You want to go on vacations. You want to do this. You want to do that. It's a little harder when you got a little 7, 8-year-old girl with you. Not that they don't love her. They love her out of this world, these people. Always posting stuff on Facebook. They love their granddaughter. They embrace the parenthood. But it's tough. It's not always easy. It's not always easy. So don't just think about you. Think about who you're leaving behind. Think about the consequences, man. If you're caught up in addiction tonight, don't you think you should reach out to a rehab center? Maybe you're caught up in addiction and you think it's not too far gone yet. But in a month it will be. It will be. And although we're talking about women, I'm going to bring this kid up again. Remember Kyle? Remember I brought Kyle and sat him over here? Kyle started doing good. Then he messed up again. Kyle messed up again. Back and forth to rehab. Leaves the rehab. Back living in the bando, the abandoned house. You don't want to be that person. Sierra Rounds. Young woman. Very attractive. Had a lot of things going for her in life. And unfortunately, she commits a crime that she deeply regrets. Deeply regrets it. Does she regret it because she's in prison? No. What happened to her, Chad? I'm going to tell you what happened to her. I want to pull up this article if I can find it. I'm going to tell you what happened to Sierra. Sierra has an important case. It's a very important case for people to hear. Because you've heard people chime in about Dennis Sika, stuff like that, when he was like, oh man, Dennis got 35 years for a drug overdose. So let's read this, okay? This girl was a model, had all kinds of things going on for her. At 28 years old, she ends up with, I think, what's Sierra get? 13 years in prison. 28, 38, 39, 40, 41. I believe Sierra has a couple children. Let me read this for you. Dallas, a 37-year-old heroin dealer and his 3 co-conspirators, including 2 women, who injected a Dallas teenage girl with a fatal dose of that heroin in March 2014, were sentenced this week in federal court in Dallas. On Monday, Jemison Eric Coleman, 37, of Los Angeles, California, was sentenced by U.S. District Judge Sam A. Lindsay to 16 years in federal prison. He pled guilty in August 2015 to 1 count of conspiracy to possess with the intent to distribute heroin, stemming from his role in the March 2014 heroin overdose death of a teenage girl. Co-conspirator Sierra Allen Rounds, 28, was sentenced on Monday by Judge Lindsay to 13 years in federal prison. 13 years is a long time. She's got kids. She's got kids. But sometimes people become addicted. They become addicted to drugs, and the drugs take over your mind. They take over you making conscious decisions, right? Most of these cases that we do, when it involves women, they were mostly all drug addicts. I don't think we ever had a case with a woman who was just a plain old drug dealer. Ever. Today's the day, man. Today's the wake-up call. Today's the day to think about, wow, man, I might be out hanging out with this chick and I'm broke and she wants me to go cop her a bag of dope. So I'm going to go get her a bag of dope, get me a bag of dope. And what's going to happen is I'm going to give it to her. And if she overdoses, it ain't my fault. She asked me to get it. The government don't look at it like that. The government says, oh shit, you're the person that bought the dope for her. You want to, tap the bag, get a little out for you to get high. Or she was going to pay you for getting it for her. But she overdoses. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to charge you with a death resulting charge. And we're going to give you 20 years. Or we're going to do you like Dennis Sika. We're going to tell you, we're going to give you life, Mr. Sika. We're going to give you life if you do not plead guilty and accept a 35-year term of imprisonment. Tells his lawyer, yeah, but I'm 40. I'm 40, Mr. Lawyer. I'll be, and he starts counting on his fingers, I'll be 75 when I get out. And that's when it hits you. That's when you start to realize, like, damn. What do you think Sierra thought when they sent her back to her cell after she got sentenced? Do you think I always do this because I used to do this in prison sometimes. I rub my head. You think she went in that cell and thought, damn, man, 13 years. Do you think she cried that night? Would you? You got 2 or 3 kids and you get sentenced to 13 years. Would you sit on your bunk and start to cry? Don't put yourself in that position where you got to sit on your bunk. You got to rub your forehead and you got to cry. No. Today's the day to be a mom. Today's the day to say, I'm better than my addiction. Today's the day to go look in the mirror and say, I got to be a different person. Today's that day. Today's the day to look in the mirror and say, I'm worth more than my situation. I'm worth more than a couple bags of heroin. I'm worth more than going out and smoking crack tonight, leaving my kids in their room. I'm worth more than selling my food stamps this month and my kids aren't going to have nothing to eat. I've seen it, man. I've seen it. I've experienced it. And you know something? I was that dude, man. I was that dude that would buy your food stamps. Not even thinking about the effects, man. Not thinking about the fact that you might got, 2, 3 kids at home and have no food. There's no food there because you sold me your food stamps. I'm just as wrong as you. I regret that. I regret that every single day. I wish I had a magic wand to take it back, because if I did, I would. It's up to you. Do you want to be that Bernal chick? You want to be Sierra? You want to be Roberta Drayham? You don't want to be any of those people, right? You don't want to be Holly. Just think about it. Think about it. And all of these women, if I could bring them on the show right now and sit them on a panel, right now, if I could walk them out of prison and put them in chairs right here, I'm sure they would tell you the same thing. They would say, you know what? I valued my addiction over my family. But today, I value my freedom and family. Today, that means something to me. Because I had to experience what it was like. When that judge hits that gavel and tells you 10, 13, 15, 20 years, 32 years, shit gets real. Realer than you could ever imagine. This is it. This is your life. Prison. Back in the day, they didn't used to bang women like that, right? People had a little more compassion, I think, back then towards women. But you heard what I read at the beginning of this video. There is no compassion. Compassion is out the window. They have no compassion. If you were a judge, could you give some girl that was a driver of a getaway car where no one was hurt, but it was a robbery, 32 years? Could you go home at night and lay in your bed next to your wife and think about your kids or your grandkids and say, oh, it's nothing? Not even think about it. I'm sure there's plenty of judges that think about it at night, but they're required by law sometimes to bang you. There's 2 924Cs on there. They have to bang her. There was no way out of it. That was it. Hit her upside the head, man. Best years of her life gone. A little girl growing up without a mother. Her mother's older now, needs her help. She's not there to take care of her mom. I've heard her cry on the phone. I heard her say, Mr. Chad, please get me out. And I say, Dalia, we're going to do everything we can. She's got the same kind of case that plenty of other men all over the country have that have gotten out of prison under compassionate release, including myself. 2 924Cs. 5 for the first one, 25 for the second. Hers was 7 and 25. My judge answered my motion. Her judge didn't. Didn't even tell her no, just didn't answer it. That's the system that we live in. Of course, you could write a writ of mandamus. You can go to the appeals court and say, hey, you haven't answered Dalia's motion, but what is that going to do? Just piss the judge off. You say, you know what? You're right, I didn't. So I'll answer it now, denied. And you're sitting in prison like her, contemplating, should I write the judge? Well, I don't want to piss him off. Should I write the court on him and, try to get the appeals court to make him do his job? Well, if I do that, then I'm going to probably lose anyway. And you're caught, man. You're caught in this web. You're stuck in this room that you can't get out of. You don't know what the right decision is. Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Until tomorrow, we're out.